You're listening to Thursday Night AMP on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
William R. Washington is on the line. Will, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, I'm right here. Sorry, I had my mic muted. I was going to say that, I wasn't honestly going to use this as a chance to plug because, I've really been, when I've been on the O'Reilly Factor, I've been on CNN, I've been so many different places talking about this incident, and I don't want to cross the two because I feel like, it's just two different things. But, since I have the opportunity to plug, RBRWrestling.com, Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, on the SoundOff and FanOff.com. Okay, so that's all I'll do as far as that's concerned. So, yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be talking to you again, Stevie. Long time no chat.
Yeah, it's been a few years since we've had a chance to talk over Skype like this because we've both been so busy with our other projects. But as you know, things have converged in a very unusual way. And you mentioned it yourself. You were on the O'Reilly Factor. You've been on a lot of talk shows this week because, and I know you don't want to plug under these circumstances, which is why I kind of coaxed you to do it and did a little bit of it myself because you're not looking to turn this tragedy into a promotional effort, and I applaud you for that. But I did want to mention that you have these things going on in your life other than this tragedy. This tragedy doesn't define you or who you are, and yet you were there in the theater that night, and you have a first-hand experience that none of us want to have or ever will have from being there during this horrible shooting.
Well, right, and that's it's unfortunately been the story of my week. I can't even. I can say a few things. I will say that one, whenever you have a traumatic incident like this, and I can't speak for everybody because everybody works a lot differently, but I will say that keeping myself busy has probably been some of the best. The best distraction I could possibly have from, I guess, my own brain, because trying to sleep definitely doesn't help. It's weird because it's odd to think about going back to that night and going back to the idea of being excited for The Dark Knight Rises and being excited for a night that ended so badly and ended very, very badly for so many different people. And thinking about the fact that my wife was supposed to go with us that night and she chose not to go, because our daughter got sick. So she stayed home and, I the whole night I'd been guilting her. Like, oh, you're going to miss it. It's The Dark Knight Rises. How could you miss this? This is going to be the biggest movie event of the year. And, for people that don't know much about me, I'm a massive Batman fan. Outside of being a professional wrestling fan, massive Batman fan. I spent all week talking about things like Nightfall, talking about Year One, watching pretty much every single Batman Blu-ray / DVD I own. I was really, really excited about this movie. And it was all I could talk about at work. So, of course, everybody knew where I was going to be that night. If you knew me and you knew me well, and you knew that the Century Theater, which, by the way, is a theater I have literally been going to since the day it opened. Thanksgiving weekend, 1998, Rugrats movie was the first movie I saw at the Century Theater in Aurora, Colorado. And that was the weekend the theater opened. I remember all the arcades were free, and they had free food, and it was this big grand opening of Aurora's Central Theater. So I've been that theater has defined me since the time I was a teenager. Hell, even I even dated a girl who worked at the movie theater. That was my place to be for a long time. So if you knew me, you knew exactly where I was going to be, which was seeing The Dark Knight Rises at my theater, the Aurora Century 16 Theater. As a matter of fact, if for those who know a little bit about me, and I promised I wouldn't be the guy to plug, but I also host another show called Now Playing Now, which is a movie review show that we do on FanOff.com. And there was a time back in 2009, we did a feature on the show. We did a viewer feedback episode of Now Playing Now, and it was, we did a segment on that show called Heidi at the Movies. Heidi is our correspondent for that show. And she went around a movie theater interviewing people outside the theater I want everybody to look that video up. It's if you search it on YouTube, it's called Heidi at the Movies, and then put in NPN just to make sure you can find it. So that would be Heidi at the Movies. Anyway, my point about that was that was a video we shot at the Century Theater. That's how much that theater meant to us. But yeah, just being there that night, and I remember for those who have seen the movie, you can really pinpoint exactly where things went wrong for us because it was a scene where, without spoiling very much, Selena Kyle basically set somebody up, and as a result, there's a big shootout with the police. And literally, as that scene is happening, there are we're hearing gunshots in the theater. That's what we expect to hear. But then a bunch of shots just come off a lot louder than the shots over the speakers. And, I kind of nudged my brother who was with me, and I'm like, those sound effects are really loud. They got to do something about that. And then we're on the left side of the theater. So if you can imagine the setup of the movie theater, we're in Theater 8, which is directly to the left of Theater 9. So we're at the far left. So the shots would be coming from the right side of us. And there would be the people who are getting hit in our theater were on the right side of the theater. So we're completely all the way on the left side. And so it took us a second to even react. But, the shots were that loud to where we were almost clear across the theater. And they were so loud that they took out my hearing for like 15 seconds. And, we turn our heads, and there are people reacting, and there's all of a sudden smoke coming into the theater, which in retrospect was the tear gas that was coming into the theater. And there's people just getting up and running for the exits. And then one guy runs back in and goes, "Don't go out there. He's got a gun." And from that moment, that's when everybody starts panicking. But, in retrospect, my wife and I actually did go back to see the movie on Sunday. We figured we needed to overcome this. We needed to not let this define our movie-going experience. Literally, my wife and I go to the movies probably about 70 times a year. So this is one of those, we do it a couple times a week, and this was not going to be what hindered our movie-going experience. So we went on Sunday, and I couldn't remember while everything was happening. Still, I wasn't really paying too much attention to the movie, but I remember certain things going on in the background. And to go back and actually see the movie and realize how much time had actually passed while all of this was going on is kind of astonishing. I think almost 4 or 5 minutes had actually gone by in the movie itself, and it's crazy to think about that from the time the shots went off to the time we were out of the theater, it was a good few minutes. And so when that guy came in the exit and said, "Everybody, they say he's got a gun, don't go out into the lobby," we all start heading upstairs to the exit at the back of the theater, and we all emptied out into a lobby. And in that lobby, there were people who there were people from both theaters, because both Theater 8 and Theater 9 emptied out into the same balcony. And I remember coming almost face to face because I was staring at the door, and then this girl comes rushing out of the door, and she's got blood all over her face. And there was another guy who comes limping out, and he's like missing a piece of his leg. Like it almost looked like he just got hit with a shotgun, and it just took a whole chunk of his leg out. And it was really just something else. It's nothing I ever want to experience again.
Yeah, it was really a case of wrong place, wrong time. But as you said yourself, you're a movie buff, you're a Batman fan. It's your local theater. It's the theater you've been going to since it opened. There was no reason to expect you wouldn't be there. I mean, I would have been at a midnight showing that night myself, but it was already sold out here. That's why I ended up with a ticket at the midnight showing on Friday.
That's one of those things I start to think back to, because there's a couple of little details that actually haven't really made their way out that really make for some kind of disturbing variables, and it really keeps me up at night. I remember being in line, and my brother can attest to this, and as we're standing in line, the girl at the register just kind of flips her shit for a second, and she goes, "Ugh, did you guys hear? They're doing a 12:15 showing because the others are sold out." And then everybody starts groaning, and they're like, "Ugh," and they're like, "I guess we have to do a 12:15 showing." And the 12:15 showing was the Theater 9 showing. where the shooting took place. So, some variables start kicking into my head. What if James Holmes had gotten there 20 minutes earlier? He would have been in the 12 o'clock showing rather than the 12:15 showing. Or what if the Century Theater had decided not to do a 12:15 showing and instead just went with the 2 theaters that were sold out at 12 o'clock because there were 3 theaters showing it? What if they had just decided to go with those 2? James Holmes would have had to turn around. Or what if I had gotten there 20 minutes later? I would have been put in the 12:15 showing. There's a lot of things that are just mind-boggling because, they were 15 minutes behind. They had barely even gotten into the movie. I believe they were at an early scene with Alfred and Bruce Wayne talking when things started going down. At least that's what I've heard from other people who were in that theater.